Buddha Bros, Self-Actualization for Men and Young Men. I made a video giving a very brief overview of David Deida's book, The Way of the Superior Man. If you're not familiar with the book or David Deida, then I suggest you take a look at that video. I'll include the link in the description below. But in that video, I mentioned that it could be a potentially scary book to read if you are not someone who's already on the path to being the strongest version of yourself, or someone who is sort of thinking about being on the path. In this video, I want to touch on one of the chapters that I thought was potentially a scary one. So that chapter is chapter 12, and it's entitled, Be Willing to Change Everything in Your Life. So David Deida in that chapter talks about how your deepest purpose is at the center of your being and is surrounded by layers of concentric circles, each circle being a lesser purpose. So the way he sees it, your life consists of penetrating those layers, those outer layers, to get into the center. So penetrating it from the outside toward the center. He gives an example of your outer purpose are things that you've inherited, either from your parents as when you were a kid or something. For example, if you're a kid and your father was a firefighter, then you wanted to grow up to be a firefighter. So that's one of your purposes. Or conversely, you wanted to rebel and be a fucking arsonist. So again, your life consists of dissolving each of these layers of outer purposes and move to the center of the core of who you are into your deeper purposes, and then eventually your deepest heart purpose. The reason why this might be somewhat scary is that I think a lot of people have this sense that they need to find that one purpose, and if they found that one purpose, then they just think that that's it, they found it, and then they just live their life satisfied that they found that purpose. But in a lot of cases, that is an outer purpose. It's not their deepest purpose. And so, when you come to that realization that you've been sort of living your life based on your outer purpose because you're too scared to move deeper to find your deepest purpose, that could be something very potentially scary to think about, because especially in this society, or in any society really, it's hard to change the way we make a living. We all have to make a living, and in a lot of ways, our purpose that we set up for ourselves is to find, the way of making a living that makes us happy. So some of us find that, some of us don't, and because of a lot of obligations of society, raising a family, things like that, sustaining ourselves, we try to, be satisfied with living a life that's not our deepest purpose. And it's really scary to try to keep continuing to find that deeper purpose, because it involves giving up a lot of the comforts that we're used to, comforts of money, things of that nature, and then keep trying to move deeper and deeper into your deepest purpose. The idea is that each purpose, each layer of purpose is meant to be lived fully to the point where it becomes empty and boring and useless. Then that's the point where it should be discarded. And a lot of people see that as a negative thing, or they're very scared of that idea of having to sort of discard this purpose that you've been living. Some people, maybe you've been living it for decades, the same purpose that you've been sort of living, and you're bored, it's not fulfilling to you anymore, but you keep continuing to live it, again, because of all these obligations. So the idea of discarding it and seemingly starting from scratch is a very scary notion. But David Deida, his view is that this is a sign of growth. This feeling of not being satisfied with that purpose that you're currently living is a sign of growth. It means you are ready to move to your next purpose. You're ready to move deeper into that layer of purposes. But a lot of people mistaking this as a sign of failure. They feel like, what's wrong with me? Why am I not satisfied with what I'm doing right now? Why am I not happy? But it's actually a sign that you should move on to a deeper purpose and get closer to the deepest purpose and the core of who you are. So how do you know when you're bailing out too soon and sort of giving up versus when it's time to move on because you fulfilled that layer of purpose? Deida provides signs of when you've fulfilled your purpose and you should move on. So the first is you suddenly have no interest whatsoever in a project or mission that just previously motivated you highly. The second is you feel surprisingly free of any regrets whatsoever for starting the project or for ending it. Third is, even though you may not have the slightest idea of what you're going to do next, you feel clear, unconfused, and especially unburdened. Fourth, you feel an increase in energy at the prospect of seizing your involvement with the project. And the fifth sign is the project seems almost silly, like collecting shoelaces or wallpapering your house with gas station receipts. Sure, you could do it, but why would you want to? So the question is, how do you move on to find your next purpose? And of course, this is the tough part, but I think you have to keep yourself open and available. It's this sort of idea of being open and available to new opportunities. Because what comes next is usually not a detailed vision. You have some sort of sense of direction of where you want to move into, where you want to go, but it's not very clear. What you need to do is just act on your impulse. Don't wait for the details. Just take action. Take the first few actions that will lead you in that direction that you want to move into. And you keep navigating through trial and error, and eventually the picture becomes clear and you start getting the details. So although I mentioned that this chapter could be potentially a scary one, for me, at least my personal experience, it was a very liberating one, or it was one that really explained to me the decisions that I've made in my life up until this point. The thing that I'm most proud of myself is that I have never been afraid to chart my own course and to rely on my instincts to guide me and not be constrained by what society thinks or whatnot. Just to give you an example, I graduated from Yale University. So, of course, a very prestigious college, Ivy League, all of that. And so when I graduated, I took a job in the financial industry because a lot of my friends did that. And, I just kind of went along with all of that because I didn't really have a clear idea of what I wanted to do. The main thing I wanted to do was just live in New York City. So took a job in finance. But the thing I was most proud of is that after 6 months of being in this job, even though I enjoyed it and I liked it, I liked all the people I worked with, I liked the job, I liked what I was doing, I knew that I wouldn't be doing this for the next 5 years of my life. So rather than sort of continuing on this path and, going along and making it very difficult to sort of change later on or switch courses, I decided to quit my job and find what it is that I'm interested in. And of course, it wasn't easy to quit my finance job because, you can make a lot of money in that industry, and having a Yale degree, you feel some sort of obligation to make a lot of money because you feel like you need to sort of use that degree. And there's also, the prestige factor of, being in the financial industry and things like that, the status, all of those things. But for me, I didn't really care about these things. I really just wanted to be happy. I wanted to find what would make me happy. So I quit that job, and then what my Yale degree did help me do is transition pretty dramatically from one thing to another. So after the finance job, I took a job at actually a film company, an independent film company, and they were starting an internet arm. I don't want to go into detail into all of that, but just to give you an example of the dramatic shift that I made from finance industry to working in more of a creative field. But it was still, business related, still sort of analyzing internet business related ideas and things like that. And then I went into internet consulting, and then I made another dramatic shift from that into advertising, being a creative strategist, coming up with big ideas, things like that. And so I've made a lot of different transitions, but what I can say is that each job that I've had, or each career that I've had, has been more fulfilling than the one prior to that. And each one I went for fully, like especially the advertising one. I really felt that that was what I really wanted to do in life, was come up with big ideas. And I read a lot of books about that, and it got me really excited about it. And so I really went full on, tried to get this job, and it wasn't easy because I didn't have any background in that industry, and so it wasn't easy, but I kept at it and I kept persisting. I almost gave up at one point. I almost gave up because it seemed like it was impossible to break into that industry. But eventually it happened because I didn't give up. So anyway, all this is to say that reading that chapter made me understand better what I was doing intuitively. I always felt sort of guilty, or sort of this sense of, what is wrong with me? Why am I not satisfied with anything I've done, especially with the advertising. I really wanted that job. I got it. And I achieved quite a bit of success in advertising. I won an award, got promoted pretty quickly, and assumed pretty high leadership position at a pretty young age. So again, that wasn't easy to move on, because it felt like, what am I doing? Why am I moving on? I'm at a very good stage in my career, so why do I move on from this? So I kept having the sense of, what's wrong with me? Why am I not satisfied? Why can I not be satisfied with anything? Why is it that I keep feeling this need to move on, but I can't deny that feeling of emptiness? That feeling like, it's a very visceral feeling like you don't really want to go to work. All of those feelings that I'm sure some of us have, but for me, it's something I couldn't deny. I couldn't fake it. I'm not someone who can fake, being happy. So I can deny all these feelings. And then when I made the decision to leave the advertising industry completely, I felt this surge of energy, this feeling of lightness. So, that chapter really made me actually feel better about myself, feel less guilty, feeling less like I'm someone who doesn't stick to anything, because there was that sense of, am I just someone who just keeps dabbling in different things and keeps moving on to different things and never just sticks to anything? I still feel a sense of that, but what I can say now is that what I'm doing currently is what fulfills me more than any of those other things I did prior to this. And this has been the case at every stage in my life. Whatever I'm doing at that current stage, I loved it more than what I did in the previous stage. So I do feel like I'm moving from the outside in toward the center. I'm moving through the outer circles of my purpose into my deepest purpose. I may not have found my deepest purpose yet, but at least I'm moving in that direction. What I'm doing now is that how I earn a living is through day trading, and I won't go into the details of that, but day trading is actually a lot different than what other people think. It's actually a very psychological endeavor. You know, you have to really work on yourself, your psyche. So I see it more of as a spiritual practice because it's a constant. It reminds me of that book, not what's discussed in that book, but sort of just the title itself, uh, Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I feel like, you know, I'm constantly maintaining myself in order to be a better trader, constantly maintaining my psyche. A lot of these things that I do, you know, trying to be the strongest version of myself is for myself, but also is beneficial to my day trading practice. So that's why I kind of see day trading as a spiritual practice, even though that sounds very strange for those who are unfamiliar with day trading. Anyway, so I do that to earn a living, and then I've been someone who's always very passionate about finding ways to be better, to be stronger. Ever since I was, in high school, I've been on this search to knowing more than anybody else, just, acquiring knowledge for the sake of knowledge, acquiring ways of, being better just for the sake of it, and actually taking action to do it. Actually, the action part I haven't done until recently, but the knowledge acquiring thing I've been doing, for quite a long time. And so I never thought that I would be doing anything with that, it was just something for myself personally. But now I find myself making these videos and sharing what I've learned with the world through this channel as well as the website. I'm doing it for the love of it, for the love of sharing these ideas with other people, no matter how few might be listening or might be, reading my posts and all of that. So I've come a long way from that first finance job, and right now, I'm not really using my Yale degree because, anybody could be a day trader. You don't have to have some sort of special degree, and that's actually the thing I do like about day trading. It's kind of you stripped of everything, and the way to gauge your success or failure is very clear. You're either making money or you're losing money. There's no hiding it. So it's just you stripped bare of who you are, because the market doesn't care what college you went to. The market doesn't care who you know. The market doesn't care, about anything. It'll just take your money unless you have your shit together. And so that's kind of what I really love about day trading. But anyway, I'm sort of going off on a tangent again. But the thing is, I'm not using my Yale degree per se, but I like to think that, having that education and that degree also allowed me to make all of these transitions, all of these dramatic shifts in my life, moving, closer and closer to my core. And I feel like I'm always using the things that I've learned in the past, all of my other outer layers of purpose. I'm using those things to move deeper into my deepest layer. And of course, I don't know if I found my deepest layer. And David Deida ends that chapter by saying or implying that once you find your deepest purpose, you move one more step, and essentially you become love, you dissolve. So the end journey, quote unquote, is to sort of dissolve into love. So that's kind of a little bit esoteric, so I didn't really want to go into that too much, but the idea is to just be the core of who you are, which is, consciousness, which is infinity, which is all of these sort of grand ideas. But those things are a little bit too elusive, so I didn't really want to go into that. But anyway, I hope you found this to be helpful. As usual, give me the comments below, thumbs up, thumbs down. Feel free to share the videos, and please subscribe. Thanks. Wake up, get your shit together, brother.